the recording. Okay, welcome everyone and welcome to the Eumans weekly meeting. In 1 week, we are going to be all together in Warsaw for the Congress of Eumans. At the moment, we have 206 people registered. The number combines the online and offline. 90 of these seems registered for the physical presence in Warsaw. And also our donation and contribution for the Congress is 790 almost 800 euros. Sorry for the numbers. Who know me knows that numbers are not my thing. Plus, we got an increase in the new members of Eumans in the last weeks. So for those of you who are joining for the first time, the meeting is available in Italian and English, and is going to be recorded and published on the YouTube channel of Eumans. So tonight we are going to have a final review of what we're going to discuss in Warsaw, particularly in light of the recent war in Ukraine. Until last week, we weren't sure about the possibility to effectively hold the Congress in Warsaw, but we are definitely here from a political, from a security and safety perspective, but also from a political standpoint, it's even more important now than ever to have the Congress in Warsaw. You have seen that we have slightly changed the title of the Congress to make it more relevant and to the point to what we are doing. So the new title is the Open Congress for Sustainable Peace, Freedom and Democracy. We identify the use of the word sustainable peace as the right way to approach the role of the European Union in the context of the war, in the context of the request of Ukraine to become part of the European Union, but also to use the concept of sustainability as a perspective issue that doesn't only regard the emergency that is currently happening, but the overall evolution of the situation. And we kept the words freedom and democracy because it's not because there is a war and not because Poland is currently having a crucial and very important role in the management of the situation with Ukraine and in welcoming the migrants from Ukraine, that a lot of the issues that were at the forefront of our Congress, namely civil rights, individual freedom, rule of law and democracy, are disappearing these days, but actually they're even more important now than ever. So for tonight, I would like Manco to help us to refocus on what is happening in Warsaw and also on the proposals that we added to the program. And Lorenzo Mineo is also connected, even if he's in Rome in the action with Extinction Rebellion now. But maybe also Lorenzo and Ian from Volt Europe can help us to focus on the demonstration that is going to be together with the Congress part of the program in Warsaw. From a program perspective, I just want to announce that I received now the confirmation from the Ombudsman, the Deputy Ombudsman in Poland, the Vice Commissioner for Human Rights, Anna Macinska. She is going to be with us at the Congress, so she's adding to the important speakers that we're going to have that are going to help us to facilitate the conversation. And the reason why I like her presence, first of all, because she's a high-level institutional figure, but also because her focus is on the migration issue. And she's going to be with us on Saturday the 12th and not Friday the 11th, because she's going to be at the border until the day before. And I think her presence is going to be essential to understand one of the contradiction of the ongoing situation, which is the comparison of the border of Ukraine, which of course is under siege, under war. So it's so very important that for that to be open. But she was also very vocal on the management of the situation on the Belarus border back in December and January. So I think her help will be essential during the Congress to think about the migration issue and the borders of the European Union with a fundamental rights lens. So I leave the floor now to Marco Cappato and then Lorenzo, Mineo and Ian on the Citizen Assembly element. Marco, your microphone is... Yes, now yes, if you can increase the volume, that should be fine.
Thank you very much, Virginia, and thank you for the work that you are doing in Warsaw. And in fact, these last days before the Congress will be crucial to involve Polish civil society. So for those of you who can have contacts in Poland, it would be of tremendous help to contact organizations and individuals to join the Congress. We have to also see what we can do at the last minute to publicize the Congress through Polish media and media advertisement and so on. Having said that, well, of course, the war changed in a way the agenda, shaping the agenda, but not completely moving or eliminating what the foundation of the reason why we are building Eumans as a movement of pan-European movement of popular initiative and the choice of Warsaw. I think we have to be aware that, well, 3 years ago, it was climate change, the issue around which the discussion was going on about the future of Europe. Climate change was the big thing that could have relaunched the idea of European unity. Then, after 6 months, it was the pandemic that seemed to be the emergency around which Europe would have been reshaped. Now there is the war, and I think it's very important to try to use, even if it's not a nice word, to use what's going on to relaunch the need for a democratic Europe, not just for more Europe, but for a Europe of citizens. So the response to what's going on, the response to the war, the response to security and energy emergency should be done involving the citizens. This is crucial for our Congress in Warsaw. We know that, I mean, even World War II was crucial to create the European Union, well, the Comunità Europea at that time. So I don't think it would be wrong to try to use this contingency to push for European reforms. The conference for the future of Europe is going on, so it's very important to connect the political agenda consequence to the war to the discussion on how reforming Europe. And our characteristic as humans is citizens' involvement for this discussion. So I don't really have much to add. I also think that the issue that were at the center of the debate when we imagined the Congress, and of course there was not the war. So we decided to go to Warsaw because Warsaw was at the heart of sovereign, in a way, anti-European populist government coalition. Now, Poland is on the border of a war, but it is still a government very unsatisfying under the angle of civil freedom, the rule of law, and democracy. So we don't have to give up our agenda. we need to connect our agenda to the emergency in order to ask for the involvement of citizens, not only to defend freedom and democracy within our states and government, but also to build together a common policy for a sustainable peace. What is a sustainable peace? Is peace obtained through democracy, freedom, and the rule of law, not just peace like neutrality among the aggressor and the aggressed. This is not the kind of peace that we are looking for. So I think that thanks to Virginia, we are succeeding in reshaping this agenda, but it's very important now to use these last days for the organizational issues too. So of course, the attendance is not only the physical attendance, it can be also the online attendance. So every and each one of us can do a lot to guarantee the success of the Congress. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marco. I also want to thank the interpreters that helped us in this process from the University of Forlì, which been instrumental for this preparation of the Congress. But I also want to thank two of the interpreters that will be with us in Warsaw, that today are here to study us, basically, and to be more effective in their work. The Congress will be available on Zoom and on the physical experience in Italian, Polish, and English. As you can imagine, this is quite a cost and also quite a difficult organization, but one of the challenges of the European Union is the language, but it's also important in the promotion that we do in these days, in reaching out to people to tell that it's possible to participate in the three languages, because is going to increase the quality of the exchange that we can have. I now leave the floor to Lorenzo Mineo, that from one citizen assembly to the other is kind of leading the process. But maybe, Lorenzo, if you can tell us something about the citizen assemblies request that we are launching, and then maybe introducing our guest, Ian from Volt Europe as well.
Thank you, Virginia. I hope my acoustic is fine.
Yeah, you can also... Don't shout less.
Now an ambulance is passing, but it should be okay. So I'm in an ongoing demonstration of Extinction Rebellion in Italy, in Rome. There is an ongoing meeting of the Minister of Environment of 3 activists that were doing an hunger strike to meet the minister. And they are talking about the request of institutionalization of a climate citizen assembly in Italy. So this is once again connected with one of the 3 emergency that Marco was referring to before. There are several roll-up behind me about the climate emergency. And I think we don't have to forget that this is still the big emergency the world is facing, and that is linked also to the war situation, because the current inaction of Europe is somehow connected with the fact that there is an emergency dependency from the oil and gas from Russia. So I think it's also a good moment to ask a citizen assembly just to decide a new energy policy here in Italy, and we have this ongoing collection of signatures for a bill of popular initiative, but also at European level. And so the idea of a European citizen assembly at European level starts now from the current emergency. So on the issues of a foreign European policy and a European energy policy. the demonstration in Warsaw that will take place on the 13th of March will have these two main topics, and the request is to give the floor to the citizens, of course, informed citizens in the form of a citizen assembly, to shape the European policies around these two priorities. And the Conference on the Future of Europe is already asking for that, because there are several recommendations on European defense issued from the panel on the role of Europe in the world that in half February has presented this recommendation to the European institutions. So starting from this recommendation, we can ask for a European Citizen Assembly on the most urgent issue that we have now on this ongoing situation with the war. So I think that Warsaw, with the session on the 12th of March, that will host Marcin Gerwin, the most relevant expert in Poland around Citizen Assembly, but also with Michele Fiorillo and Daniela Vanci from Citizens Take Over Europe. This can be the start for the building of a full campaign on European Citizen Assembly, starting, as I was saying, from these two priorities. I know that Volt was also thinking about this idea of campaign. Jan is working also on building other connection, as I know he's in touch, for instance, with the Pirate Party on this potential campaign. I think the Congress of Warsaw and the session that will be dedicated to that can be the start to build this campaign. I would like to give the floor to Jan to explain us more also what Volt is doing for the building of this campaign, and see how we can merge our initiative to be stronger.
Yeah, thanks a lot. So yes, since most people probably don't know me, I just introduce myself very quick. My name is Jan Birkmann. I'm from Volt Germany, and I'm responsible for all Conference on the Future of Europe related activities in Volt Europa. And as such, I am also lead of the working group, which has drafted an open letter demanding the establishment of a permanent European Citizen Assembly. For context, I noticed that Citizens Take Over Europe, of which Eumans is also part of, if I'm informed correctly, Virginia is nodding.
Founders.
Oh yeah, even better. Yeah, and since I have also been part of working groups in Citizens Take Over Europe as a private person for a while, I noticed that Citizens Take Over Europe was actually doing the same thing, which led me to asking Citizens Take Over Europe to join forces on this affair, making it a bipartisan initiative with other parties. We have drafted an open letter, a joint open letter version, which is lying around in my drive. And the working on this is mostly finished, I would say. It just has to be sorted out the last time. And what we thought about was that we could use the Eumans Congress as a kickoff for a joint bipartisan campaign supported by as many parties as we can get together and as many civil society organizations as we can gather around this topic. Now, this was, of course, all before the Ukraine-Russian war broke out, and since then everything has slowed down. We had a few parties interested in this before we joined. Before we tried to work together with Citizens Take Over Europe, for example, even a party from Armenia that was interested in this, a party of Cyprus, which is closely associated with Volt, and another small party from Germany. We have also started to reach out to contacts within the European Parliament, especially within the Green Group and other MEPs who are known to be interested in this. And I know that Citizens Take Over Europe contacts have also tried to do the same. The problem is that since the war, everyone is focusing on something else, and it's extremely difficult right now to get people's attention on something that is not directly associated to the current crisis. I will hopefully get a few updates from our MEP office later, which is the call exactly after this call right here. The status quo right now is that we will probably, at least it's my fear, not get the campaign that we originally wanted, because everyone is focusing on something else, and everything has slowed down a bit. What we can still try to do is get other parties on board. I have, for instance, heard back from the European Pirates Party yesterday. They seem to be interested in this as well, and I've forwarded them Citizens Take Over Europe's contacts to get involved. Other than that, as I mentioned, everything has slowed down. So this, again, has also led to some criticism or skepticism from Citizens Take Over Europe, because of course, they fear for their bipartisanship as a alliance of civil organizations. So the objective right now for us is, especially involved, to try to get more parties into this, to keep the civil society organizations on board. So as you see, everything is really a fuzz right now. The basic line is the more contacts, especially parties, we can get, the better. Other than that, I think that's all the news we have right now. Yes. Yeah, it's not necessarily getting easier, because since I don't know if anyone in Europe will still care about the Conference on the Future of Europe or citizen assemblies tomorrow or next week, depending on how the war goes. So everything is really uncertain. I'm sorry that I don't have better news on that.
Thank you, Ian, and also thanks, because one of the key of Eumans is the combination of participatory representative democracy, and I think it's a characteristic that we have in common with Volt, but also the fact that a political party is joining the campaign for us is a plus, and it's important, and the more support we can find also on other parties on the sortition-based citizen assemblies proposals for the European Citizen Assembly, for a European Citizen Assembly now, etc., is quite important, and then the campaign can develop through time. But our experience also, as Marco was saying with the pandemic, is that it's better to do things when things happen rather than waiting for the right moment. So I saw Marco was raising his hand. So.
I just wanted to comment on Jan's. Well, of course, I share what Virginia said. The fact of being like civil society movement does not mean that it should be prohibited to work together with the political electoral parties, of course. And then I think that it could seem, talking about the Conference on the Future of Europe could seem irrelevant in these days of war. We have to make an effort to ribaltare, how do you say, to overturn this, and explicitly ask that the Conference on the Future of Europe, which is already there, is already convened, it should be extended in order to discuss in a more thorough way what's going on and what are the possible response from the European Union. So I heard from Virgilio D'Astori and the European movement that there is already the request of having more time for the Conference on the Future of Europe. And I think we have to support this request, so to have a postponement of the end of the conference and explicitly link this proposal to the idea that peace and the way in which we can build a sustainable peace should be at the center of a supplementary debate. It has already been debated, so there are already proposals, but this could be a good reason for going on with this debate. And Warsaw, our Congress in Warsaw, is in a way the right occasion to link these two issues. And I just wanted to underscore also that in the past days, the Citizens Assembly by sortition convened in the context of the Conference on the Future of Europe took a strong stance in favor of euthanasia and same-sex marriage. And this is also an important sign that those instruments of civic participation can be very useful to put on the agenda issues that the majority of political parties do not want being on the agenda. So this is also something that should be notated and in a way discussed in our Congress.
Thank you, Marco. Exactly this point on the results of the citizens panel of the conference can lead to maybe what Carla can tell us. But I want to mention that, as usual, the instruments of participatory democracy are fragile and needs to be strengthened. So even if the conference on the future of Europe is not perfect, it is the first time at a transnational level that there is a sortition-based citizen assemblies, and the results are quite interesting in terms of what it came out of that. On the point on end-of-life decisions and euthanasia, that for everyone who follows Eumans is one of the pillars of our goals. I leave now the floor to Carla Pisi, who is not only coordinating the legal work on the proposal for the European Living Will, but she will also be with us in Warsaw to facilitate the session. So maybe she can tell us a bit what happened between the 13th of January when we had the first meeting on the proposal and now, and just to remember that this is one of the topics and one hook to invite people at the Congress online and offline for the next days.
Yes. Yes, indeed. Thank you, Virginia. And I just wanted to jump in on regarding what Marco was saying, because the conference at the conference of the future of Europe, it was approved. A recommendation was approved, and it stressed out on the importance of the assisted dying, of the support to palliative cares and assisted deaths. So this is an important point because it shows how citizens are really sensitive on this issue of end-of-life decision and assisted dying. Another point that I wanted to make is that we developed a document on the European Living Will, and not only on the European Living Will, but also on other initiatives regarding end-of-life decision. So between the 30th of, in the period between the 30th of January and now, we worked on better shaping the document. Also taking in all the suggestions that the Association of Right to Die Societies were made to us. So we reshaped the document, and we inserted different bullet points. The first priority that we found is that we have to find a common definition regarding, like, I don't know, the refuse of medical treatments in order to find common grounds among all the member states. Another point that we aim at achieving is also that we want to push the European institution to issue some guidelines for the medical staff in order to instruct them how to behave in case of a person that is not able to communicate, is on his or her own wheels. And then we also wanted to push for a European Living Will. We worked on the different model that can be adopted. We worked on already existing models that we can shape in order to adapt it to the European Living Will, but also we have investigated also other new models, so model from the scratch. And then the last point is the creation of a European health database where the information can be shaped. And regarding to that, one of the main challenges is of course the GDPR compliance. But we think we can, in a way, overcome this problem building a model that can be based on a voluntary basis. So everyone can decide to put on voluntary basis his information on that. And yeah, this is the main bullet points that I wish to make.
Thank you, Carla, also for the research work that's been quite thorough and trying to take into account the numerous feedback that we had, and we will discuss during the Congress more than on the specific legal details. More or less, the document is solid. I think the Congress is an opportunity to discuss how to campaign on that. And we will have with us for sure, inshallah, Erika Preisi from Switzerland, who is actually a civil disobedient herself, so it's going to be quite an interesting session. Michele, Minieri, in Italiano, I guess. Vai Michele?
Yeah. Bene, è molto importante questa.
Yes, I think this is very important, the circumstance we're in, as far as our economy is concerned, because we find ourselves in a situation that we had never thought possible. So a political vision, an unprecedented political vision is necessary, because right now we need to have a committee or an organization, the likes of which we had never seen before, because right now Marco Cappato, over the last few months, he has quite become one of the leading political figures in Italy. We are now at war. We are seeing a war that has broken out, but I want to remind you that we are a non-violent movement. Gandhi is one of the figures that inspired us. And I think that we should embrace these non-violence principles. And these are just a few things, that the ones that I mentioned. This means that if we do not have a clear structure, a careful, flexible structure, if we do not have an agenda, a clear agenda, then we're not able to work properly. We are witnessing right now a clear example. I'm just imagining here that if Marco Cappato, for example, and all of us with him, he has now become one of the leading political figures in Italy. And so we have a huge responsibility. So if we're not able to head in the direction that we want to be headed towards, first of all, we must be non-violent. If we do not have a clear direction, then we're lost and we can't work properly. I think that Cappato should take part in the elections, because I think that he would be able to receive many votes. He is very popular right now. More and more people are trying to pressure him to enter politics. And I think that we need to be serious about what we are doing, not just taking to the streets, because this is a serious thing. The stakes are very high right now. And But what we are about to do in Warsaw is at the core of our activity. Warsaw can be our occasion for all of us to take risks and to set challenges, to react to what has been done to Marco Cappato, but also to the democracy in our country. And Italy, as I have been saying for quite a long time, Italy is the plague of anti-democracy. We need to make a huge effort in order to safeguard democracy. We need to be very careful about this. We have many possibilities, but we need to remember that some of our most important principles are nonviolence, and we need to acknowledge our defeat as well. But we can't keep doing what we have been doing so far. We need to be more flexible, more smooth. Because if we're not able to do this, we're like NGO workers. But we do not have a clear agenda. This is just what I wanted to say. I think that this is going to be our first occasion to define what we really are. And we should not miss it.
Thank you, Michele. As usual, you have a lot of inputs. I get the peste one. I don't know peste in English, how you say plug. But to refer to what we will discuss and how in Warsaw, during the panel on cannabis legalization, during that session, there will be the activists, which are Polish lawyers that are working on the campaigns for legalization in Poland. And it's quite interesting that they worked on a bill of popular initiative last year, if I remember correctly, which gathered 100,000 signatures. And look, it's blocked by the Constitutional Court. So it's not being discussed by the Parliament because the Constitutional Court identified some issues on the way, in that case, is on the way how the signatures were collected. It's quite interesting that there is this similarity of the role of the Constitutional Courts holding back on participatory democracy processes. So I think also the importance of the Congress is to have really a conversation between peers, like people doing similar campaigns in similar ways, in activating similar instruments, and how the European level can become the playground field for that issues that get stuck, not only from a governmental interest, political interest, but also, for example, the role of the courts in these processes. I don't want to compare I mean, it's going to be part of the work of the Congress to reasoning on the constitutional courts and the rule of law elements, and it's a bit a long shot to compare the Polish situation with the Italian one, but I think it's a good, it's going to be one of a good angle for the movement in itself to look at the cannabis legalization from this perspective. Talking about NGOs, the NGOs and the civil society organizations in Poland are at the moment super focused on the practical management of welcoming. I think today we reached 500,000 people arriving from Ukraine in Poland. So their energies are very much hands on deck on the practical management of the situation. So also getting the attention of civil society is not the same that it would have been before. Even those who are more focused on the LGBT issues or the abortion issues or whatever are part of the societal effort to manage the migrant crisis. I think what we need to do at the Congress, and what I'm trying to do in my interactions here, is to identify those emergencies that might need a European reply, so that we can use the Congress also to elaborate some requests to the EU institutions for some immediate needs. I make a couple of examples that came out today, but for example, think about the LGBT people fleeing from Ukraine in Europe. They are arriving in a country that is not exactly LGBT friendly. So, for example, the rights of LGBT people and that security is super important, even if Poland now is the place of arrival of these people. Very practical and small things like trans women that are going through the hormonal procedure, fleeing from Ukraine to Europe, are having trouble to access the medical treatments that they need for their own process. So all of these that might seem small things in the context of the war, but are daily life issues of people fleeing through Europe. And the European Union should find ways to provide support of these. I mean, I mentioned two things, but we can mention millions. So I think the Congress is also an opportunity to give space for the Polish civil society to reflect on which demands can be made. Okay, 6:45. I don't know if there are other people that want to speak or say something. Maybe Andrea Salimbeni, since the energetic emergency and the environmental emergency. Ma stai parlando, Andrea? Are you speaking, Andrea? No, not with us, I think. Okay. I see Andrea Salimbeni connected, but not speaking with us. Anyone else want to say something on everything related to the Congress? It can be questions, it can be practical things, it can be political opinions, angles. But as Marco was saying, the most important thing at this stage is to reach out to people online and offline to make sure that they know this is happening.
Sì, ma voglio dirti, Virginia, io sono d'accordo con le...
Yes, I would like to tell you, Virginia, I agree with the fact that the situation is urgent, but I'm thinking about kids in Ukraine. Things, crazy things are happening there. This is an emergency. I don't think it is a issue of rights, of diversity. It is a live or die issue.
What I'm saying is that I'm the one in Warsaw now, so I see what the people are doing. I'm just saying that there are multiple levels. So first, the fact that you are saying it's a life or death moment, it's the reason why it's very difficult now to go to the activists in Poland and say, hey, come to the Congress to speak about the theory of the world. We need to find a way to make this useful for the people that are on the ground. This is what I'm saying, to not make theory, but to make it practical enough. This is what I was trying to say. Because exactly.
Benissimo, ma questo è il bello della politica.
Yeah, this is why politics is beautiful. We can never predict politics. These are tough times. It is important to understand that there's nothing predictable in politics, nothing is certain in politics. It is unpredictable. We didn't expect it, but it happened. They hit us, not in a direct way, but we have to support them and understand what to do. This is what I wanted to do. So this is what I wanted to say. So thank you and goodbye.
Andrea, can you hear us now? We're still in the call. Still in the call. Okay.
Ciao, buonasera.
Hi, good evening. Can I say something? Yeah, sure. Stefano, go on. Okay, thank you. I know I haven't been here for a long time. But many know me because I've been following Eumans for 2 years. And now with the Congress, I just wanted to say something about my life, our lives, because we have been following these demonstrations, and this is important. I will not be there, I will not be in Warsaw at the Congress because of personal issues, but I will be online, I will follow it online. I haven't got many Polish friends, but I will share the Congress among my European friends. I will share the news, the links. I really like the new name, which was modernized with the concept of sustainable peace. And as Michele Minieri said, the Gandhi peace. It is really important to highlight this. I would like to say something on those things we could do, just to give some inputs, because I know that there have been some civic disobedience movements, for example, thinking about stopping consuming gas in order not to buy gas from Russia. Just deciding to stop using gas, to live in the cold. But I think this isn't useful because we buy a minimum of amount of gas. So maybe we could organize some petitions, some formal requests. And another thing that really struck me, it is a dissertation, Samuele Nannoni, and he said that maybe we could have thought about including Russia in the European Union. And from this perspective, maybe Pannella would have gone and to talk to Putin. Also, there's this fear of Russia. They shouldn't become mainstream. I know my position. I know who I stand for. I stand for democracy. I stand for those who don't block demonstrations. But this non-violent movement is important. So this was what I wanted to say. This is a very tough situation, and I know it is difficult to reach people, to talk about a participatory democracy. Let's try to share this Congress to as many people as possible. And we hope that these little steps will let us achieve our goals. Have a good evening. Grazie.
Just a few seconds if anyone else wants to say something. Otherwise, I think we can say officially, see you next week in Warsaw. it's happening for real. So, oh no, wait, Andrea, we don't have 5, I mean, we will need 5 minutes only for you. But it's, I mean, Andrea is quite important for the ecological bit. So let's see. Grande.
Yeah, I had a call.
We treated you like the minister of the world, like save the ecological crisis and the energetic crisis in one place. How we make it?
No, it's about the energy security, which is a core topic. Today, it seems that suddenly we are depending on Russia and we have to stop gas from Russia. And it is good that it is good. I mean, it is bad, but good that the war raised the point. But it's not new. And every time there was an international conflict, we got in trouble, and we start thinking about how to become self-sufficient. I think that we should turn on another thought, which is not being dependent on those countries at risk where conflicts are in place, and which is totally different. Because if we say, oh, a war can be a problem for us, we will never change, because we wait the war to end, and we try to face the emergency in the worst way. That means reopening the coal power plants, for example. We have to think the opposite, which is do not be dependent on those countries where we know there is an instability, and that instability is not due by us or by how to say the poverty, but where the instability is due to governments which are not democratic. There is a report already done by the Commission, actually by an association in Europe 5 years ago, about conflict minerals and conflict energy sources, where they identify the place which are risky for us, because the place where we just mine most of the material that we use are places where there is a conflict, because the conflict, it's not it's a consequence. Often the energy sources, material sources, comes from countries where there is a conflict in place, and the reason is their energy sources and materials are the cause of the conflicts, and not the opposite. Russia is a powerful country with direct relationships with other countries, with Europe and neighbor countries, because they have gas. They have this strong relationship with China because they have gas. And they have this great, powerful friend, which is China, because of the gas, because China hasn't. So we have not to think about an energy conflict. We have to think about that we are depending on countries where extractive materials and energy sources represent the reason for which in these countries there is a war, for which in these countries there is an unbalanced distribution of richness, and that these countries are subject to not democratic governments. So I think that the proposal should come from a strategic decision, which is we have to stop or to replace those energy sources or materials if these energy sources and materials are extractive, because they generate occasion for war, occasion for international conflict. I'm sorry for the quite complicated approach. I didn't prepare any well-detailed speech, but I will try to write down in tomorrow because I think it is important and should be our point.
Thank you, Andrea. And to be honest, I think what emergency do is it takes out the best of our political instinct somehow. And I think what you said is super important. And of course, also from a more technical perspective, talking in this moment about carbon pricing, which was our original plan, it makes totally no sense, because on the long term, of course, it's a good idea, but it's very good to maybe have this approach. I see in what you say 3 pillars. One is the fundamental rights element that is associated to the to the countries where energy is produced. The second element is energy, and the third element is to still keep in mind the sustainability of the energy plan. So not going back, but going toward the future. So I think first of all, if you want to write something, we can publish it on the website in these couple of days. That would be also helpful. Maybe if it's a call to join the Congress online and offline, whatever, at this stage we are reaching the whatever. But also if maybe we reached out to a lot of people to try to have them in Warsaw, the European Environmental Bureau, etc., maybe with a very short invite to the point, and based on my experience here, where you say, I know that you have the emergency ongoing and you're probably busy with other stuff, but trying to have someone from the academic and environmental world here in Warsaw now is the good moment to have this conversation. So maybe this emergency moment can become a good trigger to have this meaningful conversation based on some of the things that you have said. Marco.
I just wanted to add on this issue. I totally share what Andrea said. The importance of a European dimension, because Russia, during the last decades, or at least the last 10 years, played a lot, played on the divisions between among European states, and the fact of that Germany, for example, was on the forefront for a special relationship with Russia, and Italy also with Germany. So the lack of a common European energy policy is an element of what happened. So not just the content of energy policy, but also the lack of unity in Europe, because even the sanction system was delayed by the fact that some countries would have paid a higher price than others. But if we were united, and that price would not have been so hard for some countries like Germany and Italy, and it would have been much more easy to have a rapid reaction, not only now, but also against the Crimea assault. So there is the content, but also the European method, the European dimension, which is crucial. And this is why it's so important to ask the involvement of European citizens in conceiving a common energy policy in Europe.
Thank you, Marco. So just a reminder for everyone that the call to action for the demonstration on Sunday morning is exactly the citizen assemblies for the defense and for the energy plan, which is already a recommendation of the Conference on the Future of Europe. And for the, the Congress will have a bit the program and also free intervention and free speeches. So what I mean is that if we have a genius of energetic policy in the EU, let's invite him in any moment. Like we will not, but in the other side, like let's try to have this type of conversations during the Congress. It's quite important to transform that into the political initiatives that are needed right now, together with what is already on the table. Okay, so thank you very much. Thanks to the interpreters, those that are interpreting our meeting.
That Andrea raised his hand again.
Ah, vai Andrea, scusa.
No, I don't know if the meeting is...
No, vai. No, it's important.
The point is important about what Marco said and what you said, carbon pricing is not the emergency. I would say it is the contrary, because the global carbon pricing is exactly the key to avoid the wrong relationships. The linking between the carbon pricing in different countries, which is part of the Paris Agreement, Article 2, about you can perform activities for reducing CO2 in another country, and use those certificates to avoid paying CO2 taxes in your country. It's the key. In fact, the border adjustment tax, it has a great influence also on Russia for Europe, because as soon as Russian companies want to export to Europe their steel because it's low cost, or any other material produced with their system, if they don't have a carbon pricing, that goods must be, they have been applied a tax. So they are pushed to develop a carbon pricing system in their own country. So it is important to have the same energy policy in all countries, because otherwise countries not having a carbon pricing, they will see the goods they export to be taxed in Europe as well in any other countries where a carbon tax is in place. So if we put a tax on CO2, a price on CO2 in Europe, and we tax the goods and the materials coming from countries not having a price on carbon, then they are pushed to define a new carbon pricing in their own country. And this will happen in Russia. And this is happening in China. So a global carbon pricing system is a peace instrument, because basically you enable a safe cooperation between countries, because all countries have the interest to set up a carbon pricing system which is linked to the other country, because its market is international market. We are not in the Cold War like 40 years ago. So the market is still global. Even if there is a war between Russia and Europe, the market is there. Even if we ban the switch code, the market will be still there. And we cannot think that from now onwards we won't have market with Russia. We cannot say that. It's crazy. I mean, we are still having, because we buy gas. And the same is for China, more than for Russia, actually. So carbon pricing system, if global, comes from a global agreement. And any global agreement is a step forward, a peace. I think this is my mind.
Oh, I told you you were like waiting for the Ministry of the World. So if global carbon pricing is an instrument of peace, and I can only trust you, it makes super sense for the title of our Congress. So your mission from today, 7/7 of the 3rd of March until the 11th of March is find a way to make this call and have people discussing this with us in Warsaw. Now, joking apart, but I think writing down what you said, it's important, and also try with the 4 or 5 meaningful people that we want to have this conversation with the participants in the Congress to try and do it with this angle. Because what my concern for the past week while I was here, to go back to what Michele was saying, is how we are sure that what we're doing makes sense. And this concept of the sustainable peace in all the angles that we have seen tonight, and this one that you have described, is exactly what it's needed and why what we are doing makes sense. So seriously, Andrea, that's your moment of this. If you can write it down, it doesn't need to be an academic paper. It needs to be.
No. It cannot be. It cannot
exactly.
be.
It needs to be simple and to the point.
Yeah. I try my best.
Thank you. Okay, I'd say thanks everyone for a very good meeting. See you next week. Of course, next Thursday there is not gonna be the Eumans weekly meeting online, and so we're gonna meet in person on Thursday evening for those of you who are in Warsaw, and then on Friday morning at the Copernicus Science Center. Have a nice day, evening, week. Ciao.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thank you.